There is a method of preserving food that can heal your gut in ways a $60 bottle of probiotic capsules never will. Not a new discovery, not a trendy supplement. Just a technique that medieval Europeans used to survive brutal winters fermenting vegetables in salt and water. Sauerkraut. Fermented turnips, pickled beets, foods that were alive, teeming with billions of beneficial bacteria and combinations modern science still can't replicate. But today, you spend hundreds on probiotic supplements. 10 billion CFUs, 15 strains, delayed-release capsules, refrigerated formulas. Your gut is still a disaster. Bloating, IBS, chronic inflammation. Autoimmune flare-ups. Because those pills contain dead or dying bacteria in numbers that couldn't compete with what one jar of medieval sauerkraut delivered naturally. And for pennies. In 1450, a German peasant family consumed fermented vegetables daily throughout winter. Cabbage fermented in wooden barrels with nothing but salt and thyme. Turnips packed in brine. Beets pickled in ceramic crocks. This wasn't gourmet cuisine, was survival. Fresh vegetables didn't exist from November to April. Fermentation was the only preservation method that didn't require energy-intensive canning or expensive salt curing. These families had no concept of probiotics. Yet they consumed 100 to 200 grams of living fermented vegetables per day. Historical medical records from medieval monasteries show remarkably low rates of digestive disorders. Dysentery was feared, yes, but chronic gut inflammation, irritable bowel syndrome, and the constellation of modern digestive diseases were virtually absent. Fast forward to today, the probiotic supplement industry is worth $58 billion globally. Americans alone spend $4 billion annually on probiotic pills, powders, and drinks. Yet, gut disease is epidemic. IBS affects 15% of the global population. Inflammatory bowel disease has doubled in 20 years. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, affects an estimated 60 to 80% of IBS patients. We're taking more probiotics than ever, but our guts are collapsing. Your medieval ancestor ate fermented cabbage from a barrel and had a healthy gut. You take a $60 probiotic supplement and still suffer. So what the hell changed? The answer isn't that probiotics don't work. The answer is that medieval fermentation created living ecosystems with hundreds of bacterial strains in bioactive forms. While modern supplements contain 5 to 15 lab-cultivated strains in dormant states that mostly die before reaching your colon, and the German peasant who ate sauerkraut daily. He understood something about gut health that the supplement industry desperately wants you to forget. Real food fermentation could be replicated in a pill. Before we go deeper, drop a comment. Have you spent money on probiotic supplements? Did they work? Or are you still dealing with gut issues? Let us know, because what you're about to learn will change how you think about gut health forever. Pick up a bottle of premium probiotics from your local health food store. The label is impressive. 50 billion CFUs colony-forming units. 15 different strains: Lactobacillus, Acidophilus, Bifido, Bacterium, Longum, Lactobacillus rhamnosus, delayed-release capsules to survive stomach acid. Refrigerated for maximum potency. Doctor-formulated, clinically studied. Sounds scientific, sounds effective. But here's what they don't tell you. By the time you swallow that capsule, many of those bacteria are already dead. Studies show that 50 to 70% of bacteria in probiotic supplements don't survive manufacturing, storage, and shelf life. They're dead before you even buy the bottle. And the ones that do survive, they have to endure your stomach acid pH 1.5 to 3.5, acidic enough to kill most bacteria. The delayed-release capsule helps, but it's not foolproof. Research from University College Cork found that even with protective capsules, only 20 to 40% of probiotic bacteria survive passage through the stomach. So if you're taking a capsule with 50 billion CFUs, maybe 10 to 20 billion actually reach your small intestine alive. And here's the kicker. Your gut already contains 100 trillion bacteria. You're adding 10 billion transient visitors to a population of 100,000 billion residents. It's like dropping 10 people into a city of 10 million and expecting them to change the culture. Compare that to medieval fermented vegetables. A single tablespoon of properly fermented sauerkraut contains 1 to 10 billion CFUs of living, active bacteria. But unlike supplement bacteria, these have been thriving in an acidic environment pH 3.5 to 4.5 for weeks. They're adapted to acid. They're already alive and metabolically active. They come packaged in food matrix fiber, organic acids, enzymes that protects them and feeds them as they transit through your digestive system. And the diversity. Modern probiotic supplements contain 5 to 15 strains, carefully selected, lab-cultivated, and isolated. Medieval sauerkraut contained 50 to 100 different bacterial species naturally occurring, co-evolved, working synergistically. These weren't monocultures grown in sterile labs. There were wild fermentation ecosystems captured from cabbage leaves, wooden barrels, cellar air, and human hands. Research from the University of Leipzig analyzed traditional German sauerkraut and identified over 200 different microbial species bacteria, yeasts, and even beneficial molds. This complexity created a robust probiotic ecosystem that could colonize the gut, compete with pathogens, and produce a wide range of beneficial metabolites. Your probiotic capsule. 5 to 15 species, all from the same genus. No yeasts, no diversity, no synergy. Then there's the problem of transient colonization. Most probiotic bacteria in supplements are transient. They pass through your gut and are gone within. A few days of stopping supplementation, they don't colonize. They don't establish permanent populations. You're renting bacteria, not owning them. Fermented food bacteria, especially those consumed regularly, have a better chance of colonization because they arrive in large numbers, repeatedly, with food matrix that supports their survival. Studies show that people who consume fermented foods daily develop stable populations of beneficial bacteria that persist even after stopping consumption. And the cost. A bottle of premium probiotics costs $40 to $80 and lasts a month. A head of cabbage costs $2 and makes a quart of sauerkraut that lasts weeks and delivers more beneficial bacteria per serving. Medieval peasants weren't wealthy. They fermented vegetables because it was cheap, effective, and necessary. Modern supplement companies have convinced you that you need their expensive pills to get probiotics. But for 6,000 years, humans got probiotics from food. And it worked better. To understand why medieval fermentation worked, we need to step into a 15th century German farmhouse cellar. It's October. The cabbage harvest is complete. Winter is coming. Fresh vegetables will be gone for 6 months. The family must preserve food or starve. The farmer's wife takes heads of green cabbage freshly harvested, leaves still damp with morning dew. She removes the outer leaves, cores the cabbage, and slices it thinly with a sharp knife. She places the shredded cabbage in a large wooden barrel or ceramic crock vessels used for generations, their porous surfaces harboring beneficial bacteria from previous fermentations. She adds sea salt, not refined table salt, but coarse, mineral-rich salt from coastal regions. The ratio is critical, about 2 to 3% salt by weight. Too little and pathogenic bacteria can thrive. Too much and beneficial bacteria are inhibited. This knowledge was passed down through generations, grandmother to mother to daughter. She mixes the cabbage and salt by hand, massaging and squeezing. This releases water from the cabbage cells, creating brine. After 10 to 15 minutes of working the cabbage, liquid pools at the bottom of the barrel. She packs the cabbage tightly, pressing down to eliminate air pockets. She places a wooden lid on top, weighted with a clean stone to keep the cabbage submerged below the brine. Then she walks away. The barrel sits in a cool cellar 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit, stable temperature, away from sunlight. And fermentation begins. Within hours, bacteria on the cabbage leaves leuconestoc mesenteroids. naturally present on all vegetables, start consuming sugars in the cabbage. They produce lactic acid and carbon dioxide. The CO2 pushes out oxygen, creating an anaerobic environment. The lactic acid drops the pH. After 2 to 3 days, leuconostoc populations peak. The environment is now too acidic for them. But other bacteria, more acid-tolerant, take over. Lactobacillus brueis, Lactobacillus plantarum, Pediococcus pentasaceus. Each species thrives at different pH levels, temperatures, and nutrient availability. They work in succession, each creating conditions for the next. This is called ecological succession, and it's the secret to fermentation's power. You're not inoculating with a single strain. You're creating an environment where dozens of species naturally develop in sequence, each contributing unique metabolic capabilities. By week 2, the sauerkraut is tangy, complex, alive. The farmer's wife tastes it. She knows by flavor and texture when it's ready. She doesn't have pH meters or lab tests. She has centuries of accumulated knowledge encoded in sensory experience. The finished sauerkraut is packed tightly in the barrel, kept submerged, and stored in the cellar. It stays alive but stable for months. The family eats it daily, a side dish with every meal. A spoonful of sauerkraut, a chunk of dark bread, some smoked meat or fish. This was the standard medieval diet in Northern Europe from November to April, and the health benefits were immediate and profound. The living bacteria in that sauerkraut populated their guts with beneficial species. The organic acids lactic acid, acetic acid, lowered intestinal pH, creating an environment hostile to pathogens. The fermentation process increased vitamin C content critical for preventing scurvy in winter, increased B vitamin levels, and made minerals more bioavailable. Research from the University of Hohenheim found that fermented cabbage contains 20 times more vitamin C than fresh cabbage. The bacteria synthesize it during fermentation. Medieval sailors who consumed sauerkraut on long voyages had dramatically lower rates of scurvy compared to those without it. Captain James Cook famously used sauerkraut to keep his crew healthy on his 3-year Pacific voyage in the 1770s. But it wasn't just scurvy prevention. The probiotic effect was transformative. People consuming fermented vegetables daily had robust, diverse gut microbiomes. Their immune systems were strong. Their digestion was efficient. And chronic gut inflammation, the root of so many modern diseases, was virtually absent. Let's talk about what happens during fermentation, because this is where modern probiotics fail compared to traditional methods. When you ferment cabbage, you're creating a controlled bacterial succession. It starts with leuconostoc mesenteroids. This species is heterofermentivate, produces lactic acid, acetic acid, ethanol, and CO2. The CO2 creates an oxygen-free environment. Oxygen is toxic to the most beneficial gut bacteria anaerobes, so removing it is critical. As leuconostoc lowers the pH to around 4.5, it creates ideal conditions for lactobacillus species. L. plantarum, L. brueis, L. fermentum take over. These are homofermentative. They produce primarily lactic acid, further dropping the pH to 3.5 to 4.0. This acidic environment is hostile to pathogenic bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, and Clostridium. But here's what makes this powerful for gut health. These bacteria don't just produce lactic acid. They produce a complex array of bioactive compounds. Short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs, like butyrate, propionate, and acetate. These SCFAs are fuel for the cells lining your colon. They reduce inflammation, improve barrier function, and regulate immune responses. Research from Stanford University found that people consuming fermented vegetables increased their SCFA production by 40% within 3 weeks. Their gut lining became more robust. Markers of systemic inflammation, CRP, IL-6, decreased significantly. Your probiotic capsule contains dormant bacteria that, if they survive to your colon, might produce some lactic acid. but they're not producing the full spectrum of metabolites that come from active fermentation in food matrix. Then there's the concept of bacterial metabolites. During fermentation, bacteria produce enzymes that break down complex plant compounds. They produce bacteriocins, natural antibiotics that kill pathogenic bacteria. They produce exopolysaccharides, complex sugars that stimulate immune function and improve gut barrier integrity. A study published in Frontiers in Microbiology analyzed the metabolome, all small molecules of traditionally fermented sauerkraut, and identified over 300 distinct compounds, including amino acids, peptides, organic acids, vitamins, and novel bioactive molecules. This complexity cannot be replicated by taking isolated bacterial strains. And then there's the synergy between bacteria and food matrix. Fermented cabbage contains fiber, both soluble and insoluble. This fiber acts as a delivery vehicle, protecting bacteria as they transit through your stomach and small intestine. It also acts as prebiotic fuel, feeding the bacteria once they reach your colon. Probiotic capsules often contain prebiotics inulin, FOS, but it's an artificial pairing. In fermented food, the bacteria and fiber evolve together. The bacteria are adapted to consuming those specific plant fibers. They're already metabolically active when they arrive in your gut. Let's talk about strain diversity. Modern probiotic research tends to focus on a few superstar strains: L. acidophilus, B. longum, L. rhamnosus, GG. These strains have been studied extensively and shown to have benefits. But your gut doesn't operate on a few superstars. It operates on diversity. A healthy human gut microbiome contains 500 to 1,000 different species of bacteria. Diversity is stability. When you have hundreds of species, no single pathogen can dominate. When you have only a few species, the ecosystem is fragile. Traditional fermented foods introduce dozens to hundreds of species in a single serving. A 2019 study from UC Davis analyzed homemade sauerkraut and found 89 distinct bacterial species in a single batch. Commercial sauerkraut from a store. 12 species, probiotic supplement. 5 to 15 species, all from the same few genera. And here's the critical part. Many of the bacteria in traditional fermentation are UNT even in the databases. They're uncharacterized species that science hasn't identified yet. But they've been working in human guts for millennia. Medieval peasants didn't know their names, but they benefited from their presence. Finally, there's the issue of live versus dormant bacteria. Probiotic supplements contain freeze-dried bacteria in a dormant state. When you swallow them, they need to rehydrate and wake up in your gut. This process takes time, during which many die. And even those that wake up are stressed they've been frozen, dried, stored in capsules for months. Fermented food bacteria are already alive, active, and metabolically engaged. They hit your gut ready to work. Studies show that active bacteria colonize more effectively than dormant bacteria. It's the difference between planting seeds and transplanting living plants. In 2021, researchers at Stanford Medicine conducted a groundbreaking study comparing fermented foods to probiotic supplements for gut health. They recruited 36 healthy adults and divided them into two groups. Group A consumed fermented foods: daily yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, kombucha. Group B took high-dose probiotic supplements, 15 strains, 50 billion CFUs. After 10 weeks, the results were stunning. The fermented food group showed a 22% increase in microbiome diversity. Inflammation markers dropped significantly. 19 immune proteins showed reduced activity. Their gut barrier function improved. The probiotic supplement group, minimal change in diversity. Some modest improvements in specific bacterial populations, but nothing close to the fermented food group. The lead researcher, Dr. Justin Sonnenberg, stated, "The data suggests that fermented foods are a more effective way to enhance microbiome health than taking probiotic supplements. Another study from University College Cork in Ireland tracked IBS patients over 6 months. Group A consumed 100 grams of fermented vegetables daily. Group B took a commercial probiotic supplement. Group C was controlled no intervention. The fermented vegetable group showed 70% reduction in IBS symptoms: bloating, pain, irregular bowel movements. The probiotic group showed 35% reduction. The control group, no change. Both interventions helped, but fermented food was twice as effective. And here's the most compelling evidence: population studies. A 2018 epidemiological study found that Germans who consumed sauerkraut at least 3 times per week had 40% lower incidence of IBS compared to Germans who rarely or never consumed it. This wasn't about genetics, it was about dietary patterns. Today, functional medicine practitioners are prescribing fermented foods as first-line treatment for gut issues. Dr. Terry Walls, who reversed her multiple sclerosis symptoms through diet, emphasizes fermented vegetables daily. Dr. Amy Myers, expert in autoimmune conditions, recommends 2 to 4 tablespoons of fermented vegetables with every meal. And people are reporting results that years of probiotic supplements never delivered: normalized bowel movements, eliminated bloating, resolved chronic inflammation, improved energy, better mental clarity. These aren't anecdotes. Stool testing before and after shows dramatic increases in beneficial bacteria populations: Lactobacillus, Akkermansia mucinifila, a keystone species for gut health. The decline of fermentation began with industrialization. In the 1800s, most households in Europe and America fermented vegetables routinely. It was a survival skill, passed down through generations. Every family had crocks of sauerkraut, pickles, or kimchi in their cellar or root cellar. But in the early 1900s, 2 inventions destroyed this tradition: refrigeration and canning. Suddenly, you could preserve food without fermentation. Refrigerators kept vegetables fresh longer. Canned goods lasted indefinitely. Fermentation seemed unnecessary, old-fashioned, even risky. By the 1950s, home fermentation had virtually disappeared in the United States. Store-bought pickles were vinegar-based, not fermented. Sauerkraut was pasteurized, killing all bacteria. The living probiotic foods that sustained human gut health for millennia were replaced with dead, sterile products. And the timing matches perfectly with the rise of gut disease. In 1950, irritable bowel syndrome was rare. By 2000, it affected 10 to 15% of the population. Inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, and ulcerative colitis was almost unknown before. 1,950. By 2020, it affected millions. The supplement industry saw an opportunity. If people's guts were deteriorating, sell them probiotics. By the 1990s, probiotic supplements were a growing market. By 2020, it was a $58 billion industry. The pitch was compelling: all the benefits of fermented foods in a convenient pill. No need to make sauerkraut. No need to learn fermentation. Just take a capsule. But the supplement industry optimized for convenience and profit, not efficacy. They isolated specific strains, grew them in labs, freeze-dried them, and packaged them in expensive bottles. They claimed clinically proven benefits based on studies using their specific strains. They created proprietary blends and patented formulations. What they couldn't replicate was the complexity of wild fermentation, the synergy of dozens of species, the protective food matrix, the living metabolically active bacteria, the secondary metabolites SCFAs, bacteriocins, vitamins produced during fermentation. And they certainly couldn't replicate it for $2 worth of cabbage. Since 2000, as probiotic supplement sales exploded, gut disease rates continued rising. We're spending billions on probiotics, yet IBS, IBD, SIBO, and chronic gut inflammation are epidemic. The supplements aren't working at the population level because they an inferior delivery system compared to traditional fermented food. Medieval peasants didn't have gut disease epidemics. They ate fermented vegetables daily because that's what survival required. We abandoned that practice, developed gut problems, and then created a multi-billion-dollar industry to sell us an inferior replacement. If you want to heal your gut the way medieval fermentation can, you have 3 options. First, buy real fermented vegetables. Look for products labeled raw, unpasteurized, or naturally fermented. They should be refrigerated. Live bacteria need cold storage. Check the ingredients: vegetables, salt, water. No vinegar, that's pickling, not fermenting. Brands like Farmhouse Culture, Wild Brine, and local farmers market vendors often make authentic fermented vegetables. Eat 2 to 4 tablespoons with each meal. Second, make your own. It's shockingly simple. Shred cabbage, mix with 2% salt by weight. Pack into a jar, submerge under brine. Leave at room temperature for 5 to 14 days. Taste daily. When it's tangy and complex, move it to the fridge. 1 head of cabbage costs $2 and makes enough sauerkraut to last 2 weeks. Hundreds of online tutorials exist. Your ancestors did this without YouTube. Third, diversify your fermented foods. Don't just eat sauerkraut. Try kimchi, Korean fermented vegetables, beet kvass, fermented beet juice, fermented pickles, yogurt if you tolerate dairy, kefir, miso, tempeh. Each food introduces different bacterial communities. Diversity is the goal. The point isn't to demonize probiotic supplements entirely. They have a role post-antibiotic recovery, acute gut infections, traveling when fermented foods aren't available. But they should be an adjunct, not a replacement for fermented food. If you're tired of expensive supplements that don't work, hit that like button and subscribe. We're exposing the traditional methods that heal better than modern products.